Welcome back to Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. The longest government shutdown in American history is officially over. Late last night, representatives got together and voted to pass the funding bill that had previously passed in the Senate. It then landed on the president's desk where he signed it and passed it, bringing 43 days of a shutdown government to a close. The news, of course, was met with mixed emotion. Many feel that the bill that got to the House and then to the President should never even have made it out of the Senate. After over a month of standing resolute on not backing down and not capitulating to Republicans to keep the Affordable Care Act subsidies from expiring, 8 of the senatorial Democrats folded, giving Republicans enough votes to pass the spending bill and get it to the House and eventually to the president. Many, I think, understandably were furious, feeling that after all this, the shutdown was for nothing. The Democrats did what they always do, and when things are looking up, they fold and lose all momentum and just fall on their faces. The Senate Democrats gave up and gave in when it mattered most and got nothing in return for it. And now we were all going to pay, in some ways literally, because those 8 Democratic senators couldn't handle the pressure. Ending the shutdown the way they did was the ultimate betrayal in their eyes. To a point, many were calling for the resignation of Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, feeling this seeming inability to keep his caucus united and keep those 8 senators from voting with Republicans to pass the Republican spending bill was a massive failure in leadership, and if he couldn't do it, he had to go. And while I was never in the fire Chuck Schumer camp, I was feeling pretty similar to that. I had a pretty good sense of what Democrats were fighting for, why they were fighting for it, and how important it was for them to stay strong and united and not backing down. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud of Democrats. So when it was announced that 8 senators had broken with their party and that Republicans had the votes to pass the spending bill, to say I was disappointed would be a massive understatement. I was thinking, after all this fight, after all this united strength, this is what it gets us: nothing. Typical Democrats. My hope was, sure, it got through the Senate, but it'll stall in the House. The ones in the House will stop this from going through, so it's okay. But that hope was quickly evaporated when the news broke that the votes were in and it had passed the House 222 to 209, meaning 6 Democratic representatives voted for passing it, giving Republicans votes they needed in the House to get it to the president. And I was shocked at the rapidity at which the president then signed it. But I guess if all he had to do was sign his name, that's the minimum amount of work he could possibly have to do. And minimum amount of work is exactly what he excels at. And that was it. Any hope that it was going to stall and not pass was completely gone in a matter of hours. It was over for real. Government shutdown, finished. Well, this one anyway. In typical politician fashion, this was more of a temporary fix. The bill funds the government until the end of January, so it's really a funding extension. But the bill also did more than just turn the lights back on at government. It ensured that SNAP payments were back on until the end of September. One of the things the administration was trying to do during this shutdown was to keep this necessary food away from those who needed it, leaving thousands of vulnerable Americans unable to know if they were going to be able to eat, to a point that they were actually taking the matter to court to stop states from distributing food to their people. So at least for the next 3/4 of the year, the administration cannot get in between those people and their ability to feed themselves. President Trump and his fellow Republicans wanted to use those food insecure people as a weapon against Democrats, and in the end, Democrats ended the cruelty being inflicted upon them. As the shutdown raged on, it was actually something I was thinking about, that sure, Democrats in the Congress needed to stand strong and wait it out, but how long could these people hold on and hold out? They were running out of food. They had no way to feed themselves. They couldn't hold out forever. And with Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up, to have them in a position where they may not be able to feed themselves or their family at a time that's supposed to be all about family seemed abominable. And so to keep them wondering and waiting, literally starving, seemed like the ultimate cruelty. In that way, at least, least, ending the shutdown as quickly as possible seemed like the more compassionate thing to do, because Republicans in Congress made it abundantly clear that they would gladly watch their own people starve and die if it meant that they could beat the Democrats and win the shutdown. Which, oh, by the way, I don't think they even managed, since a majority of people blame Republicans for the shutdown, rightfully so. So in terms of messaging, Republicans still lost. The bill also ensured that there would be reversing of some of the layoffs that the president did during the shutdown, ensured that there would be back pay for the federal employees that had been furloughed this whole time, and made sure that there were protections against further layoffs. And while I'm sure the average American doesn't care a whole lot about that part, for those who work within the government, this was a big win. Most obviously for those that the president laid off while the government was shut down. But let's not forget that even though he had signed into law that federal workers would get back pay after a shutdown ended following the last government shutdown, the administration did not want to pay the federal workers back pay and insinuated that they would not do it. So this bill made sure that they have to follow the law. The law, I remind you, that Donald Trump himself signed into law back in 2019. I know a lot of those federal workers are probably feeling pretty nervous that they were not going to see the pay that they were owed. So having that uncertainty lifted is almost definitely a weight off their shoulders. But while that's what the bill did, for many what's much more significant is what the bill didn't do. For Democrats, this shutdown was all about the Affordable Care Act subsidies and making sure that they didn't expire, and this bill doesn't address them at all. That department, all Democrats got was an agreement to hold a vote in mid-December on an extension for them. Something many people equate to basically a handshake deal, one that is easily broken. Even if Democrats crafted a solid bill that addressed these subsidies, it could pass the Senate, and once it got to the House, Mike Johnson could just never bring it to the floor, never put it to a vote, and it basically died right there, basically costing Democrats and Americans the one thing that Democrats were fighting this shutdown for. And many are sure that's exactly the Republicans' plan. Promise Democrats a vote in the Senate and make sure it never passes the House and can never actually be implemented, and finally killing off their odious Obamacare once and for all. Some would call that view cynical. Some would say it's purely realistic and based on the way Republicans always do things. The outcome there and what it will mean for the future of American healthcare remains to be seen. So with the 43-day government shutdown finally at an end, thoughts turn to who won and who lost the most. Republicans can definitely say they got Democrats to blink first, and that will always be a win in their eyes. Senate Democrats were never able to goad the so-called master negotiator Donald Trump to involve himself in the shutdown fight itself. They may have been counting on him to do what he always does and flip over the game board when Republicans are trying to craft a carefully planned out game plan. But for once, the president didn't try to push his way in and take all the credit for himself and mess up any plans they had. He just let the Senate Republicans do the work for him. So depending on how you look at that, that's another win for the Republicans. But while it's true that Democrats didn't get the one thing that they were fighting this shutdown to get, if either side can be declared a true winner of the shutdown, Democrats still came out with more overall success than failure. And while I do want to state emphatically that this is not a game to be won or lost. People's real lives and real health are on the line here, to use the game analogy. While it certainly doesn't feel like it in some ways, Democrats did come out the winners here. Yeah, they had to put the trust in shifty Republicans to allow them to vote on an extension for the Affordable Care Act subsidies. They got measures to reverse Trump shutdown layoffs and measures to ensure there aren't going to be any more layoffs. They got assurances that the federal workers that have been furloughed are going to get their back pay, even as the administration was doing everything in their power to not give that to them, even when the law said they had to. So those are all wins, no doubt about it. But I think one of the Democrats' biggest wins was something a little bit less tangible. For the first time in what feels like a long time, people genuinely felt hope again with Democrats. It has been a long, hard, almost 10 months under Trump. And given how brutal and awful everything has been, it has been difficult to find even a glimmer of hope, any sense that there was a light at the end of this long, dark tunnel. But when there was this sense that Democrats were fighting for what was right, it was fighting for all Americans, not just Democrats, but all Americans, it really reinvigorated us. It was clear everybody was getting really tired of this shutdown, and they were placing the blame exactly where it belonged, which was on Republicans. This was a Republican-led shutdown, 100%. 100%. And that Republican dissatisfaction led to so many wins in this recent election for Democrats. New Jersey and Virginia got new Democrat governors. A young Democratic socialist won the mayoral race in New York. While it's very possible they could have won even without this shutdown, it is undoubtedly just how bad this shutdown made Republicans look that helped these Democratic candidates beat their Republican oppositions in their elections and win. It helped people really believe that next November we could really make huge gains in the midterms and claw back some of that power away from Donald Trump and the administration. People went from just hoping things would start to get better to genuine believing that they could and would. Yeah, ending the shutdown without getting the Affordable Care Act subsidies extended feels bad. The whole shutdown was for nothing. But we got to remember that the fight for healthcare isn't over just because they weren't able to get a funding bill that would promise to extend them. Democrats have not stopped fighting for it, and they will not stop. A setback like this is not a full-on loss. And as I've said, Democrats gained so much, while realistically Republicans cannot really say the same. While the government shutdown may be over, the things the Democrats stood for and fought for are not. A change is coming, a positive change. We have just started to see the start. Yes, the shutdown resolution could have been better. That doesn't mean it was entirely bad either. The key now is to keep that momentum going and to keep moving forward. As the great Barack Obama once said, yes, we can. And yeah, we can. Good things are on the horizon, and coming out of this shutdown was only the beginning. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, when I cut you off another slice of news.
Thank you.